Odysseus isn't the clever hero the legend promises. He's the guy whose own choices turn a 2-week sail home into a 10-year disaster. Before Nolan's Odyssey hits theaters July 17th, here's the story, fast. A crew that shrinks with every stop, monsters that didn't have to happen, and a war hero who cannot stop poking things that are asleep. Nearly every disaster on this trip traces back to one man. Here's how he wrecks his own way home. Odysseus is the king of Ithaca, a small rocky island where, by his own description, nothing grows except tough people. He has a wife, Penelope, a baby son, Telemachus, and absolutely no interest in going to war. When the recruiters come, he pretends to be insane. He hitches a donkey and an ox to the same plow and starts sowing his fields with salt. It almost works. Then someone puts baby Telemachus down in front of the plow, and Odysseus swerves. So much for insane. Off to Troy he goes. The Trojan War lasts 10 years, and Odysseus is the reason the Greeks finally win it. The giant wooden horse, the fake retreat, the soldiers hiding inside, all his idea. The city falls in a single night. And this is where his problem starts, because Odysseus knows exactly how clever he is. He sails for home with 12 ships, 600 men, and an ego the size of the Aegean. Keep count of those 12 ships, by the way. It's going to get grim. First stop, the land of the Cicones. The crew raids the town, which goes fine, and then, instead of leaving, they stay on the beach to drink and barbecue. The Cicones come back with reinforcements at dawn. Odysseus loses 72 men before they even clear the harbor. Lesson 1. When you've gotten away with it, leave. Then, a storm blows the fleet to the land of the lotus-eaters, where the locals are perfectly friendly and just want to share their favorite plant. Anyone who eats it forgets home exists and wants nothing but to lie around eating more lotus. 3 of the crew try it and have to be dragged back to the ships crying and tied to the benches, still begging for more. It's not exactly a subtle metaphor for giving up on going home. Next comes the cave. They land on an island of the Cyclops and find a cavern stocked with cheese and lambs. The smart move is to grab the cheese and go. The crew literally suggests this. But Odysseus wants to meet the owner, because maybe the owner will give him a gift. The owner is Polyphemus, a one-eyed giant the size of a hillside, and his idea of hospitality is eating 2 of the crew raw and calling it dinner. Here's where Odysseus earns his reputation. He can't kill the giant outright. Nobody else could roll the boulder off the door. So he gets Polyphemus blackout, drunk on wine, tells him his name is Nobody, and when the giant passes out, drives a sharpened, fire-hardened stake into his one eye. Polyphemus screams to the other Cyclopes for help, screaming that nobody is attacking him. The neighbors tell him to sleep it off. In the morning, the blinded giant opens the cave to let his sheep out, feeling each one's back as it passes, and the crew rides out strapped underneath the sheep. It is, honestly, a perfect escape. And then Odysseus ruins everything. Safely on his ship, he turns back and shouts his real name at the giant, his name, his father's name, and his home address, basically daring the universe to come get him. Because Polyphemus has a father, Poseidon, god of the entire sea, Odysseus still has to sail home on. The giant prays to his dad, and Poseidon's answer is simple. This man gets home late, alone, broken, on someone else's ship, to a house full of trouble. Remember this moment. Every single thing that happens next flows from it. It gets worse, because the very next stop almost fixes everything. Aeolus, keeper of the winds, likes Odysseus so much that he gifts him a leather bag containing every wind that could blow him off course, leaving only the gentle westerly pointed straight at Ithaca. For 9 days and nights, Odysseus personally holds the sail lines, refusing to sleep. On day 10, they're close enough to see the cooking fires on shore, home, right there. And Odysseus, finally, understandably, catastrophically, falls asleep. The crew has spent 9 days staring at that mysterious bag their captain won't let anyone touch. Obviously, it's treasure. Obviously, he's hoarding it. They open it within sight of the coastline. Every storm wind on Earth explodes out at once, and the fleet is blown all the way back to where it started. Aelus takes one look at them returning and slams the door. Anyone this unlucky is clearly cursed, and he wants no part of it. Then it stops being funny. The fleet rows into a beautiful harbor belonging to the Lestrygonians, who turn out to be giants with a taste for sailors. They smash the ships with boulders and spear the survivors like fish. 11 ships go in. One comes out, carrying 45 survivors out of 600 men. That's the whole scene, and the poem barely slows down for it, which somehow makes it worse. The survivors limp to the island of Circe, a witch who welcomes half the crew to a feast, then taps them with a wand and turns them into pigs. Odysseus, armed with a protective herb from the god Hermes, walks in immune, and Circe is so impressed that she turns everyone back and becomes the crew's greatest ally. They stay a year recovering. She's also the one who tells Odysseus the bad news. Before he can go home, he has to sail to the edge of the world and consult the dead. So he does. At the border of the underworld, the ghosts come to him. A prophet tells him the road home and one rule that can't be broken. When you reach the island of the sun god, do not touch the cattle. And then a ghost approaches that he didn't expect. His mother. She was alive when he left for Troy. She tells him she died of grief, waiting. 3 times he tries to hug her. 3 times his arms close on nothing. The most cunning man in the story, and there is nothing he can do about it. The way home is a monster gauntlet. First, the Sirens, whose song makes sailors steer into the rocks to get closer to it. Odysseus plugs the crew's ears with beeswax, but he wants to hear it himself, of course. So he has himself tied to the mast with orders to ignore anything he says. The song hits, and he begs, threatens, and strains at the ropes, while the crew rows on, deaf and blissful. He becomes the only man to hear the sirens and live. Then, the Strait. On one side, Charybdis, a whirlpool that swallows the sea 3 times a day and vomits it back up. On the other, Scylla, a 6-headed thing in a cliff cave. Circe's advice was blunt. You can't beat either one. Hug Scylla's side, and she takes exactly 6 men, 1 per mouth, instead of the whirlpool taking everyone. Odysseus does the math, doesn't tell the crew, and sails close to the cliff. 6 men are snatched screaming into the air. It works. That's the horror of it. It works. And he chose it. Exhausted, the crew begs to rest on a beautiful island. The island with the sun god's cattle. Odysseus makes every man swear not to touch them. And for a month, while storm winds trap them there and the food runs out, they keep the oath. Then, one day while Odysseus is inland praying, the crew does the math of starving men. Better to die at sea with a full stomach than waste away, and kills the best cows. The sun god goes straight to Zeus. The moment the ship leaves the island, a thunderbolt splits it in half. Every remaining man drowns. Odysseus alone rides the wreckage through Charybdis itself and washes up, after 9 days in the water, on the island of a nymph named Calypso. Here's the part the movie trailers won't dwell on. He's there for 7 years. Calypso wants a husband and even offers him immortality, eternal youth, on a paradise island forever. He turns it down. Every day he sits on the beach and stares at the horizon in the direction of a rocky island where nothing grows, because immortality with the wrong person is just a longer prison sentence. Finally, the gods vote to cut him loose. He builds a raft, Poseidon smashes it one last time out of spite, and the mostly drowned king of Ithaca washes up naked on a foreign beach. where a princess finds him and takes him to her father's court. Asked who he is, he tells the whole story you just heard, and then they sail him home. After 10 years, Odysseus is back on Ithaca, and the war isn't over. Because here's what was happening while he was gone. Everyone assumes he's dead. Everyone except Penelope. 108 local princes have moved into the palace, eating his food and demanding the queen choose one of them as the new king. Penelope, every bit her husband's equal, holds them off with a trick. She'll choose as soon as she finishes weaving a burial shroud for Odysseus's father. She weaves all day, and every night she secretly unravels it. It buys her 3 years before a servant rats her out. So Odysseus doesn't storm in the front gate. Athena disguises him as a ragged old beggar, and he cases his own palace, watching who's loyal, who's rotten, who feeds the strange old man, and who throws a stool at him. On the way in, an old dog lifts his head from a dung heap. Argos, Odysseus's own hound, a puppy when he left, now 20 years old, too weak to stand, and the only creature on the island who recognizes him instantly. Odysseus can't blow his cover. He wipes away one tear and walks past, and Argos, having finally seen his master come home, lies back down and dies. 3,000 years later, that's still the hardest paragraph in the poem. Penelope, meanwhile, announces a contest. She'll marry whichever suitor can string Odysseus's great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads in a row. One by one, the strongest men in the palace strain at the bow and can't even bend it. Then, the beggar asks for a try. The suitors howl with laughter, right up until he strings it in one smooth motion, like a musician tuning an instrument, and puts an arrow through all 12 axes without standing up. Then, he stands up. The doors are locked, the weapons have been quietly removed from the walls, and the beggar announces, "There's one more target left." What follows is closer to a reckoning than a fight, with his son Telemachus at his side. When it's over, 108 uninvited guests have permanently checked out. And then comes the best scene in the whole poem, with no monsters and no arrows involved. Penelope, who has been fooled by clever strangers for 20 years, isn't about to be fooled now. She tests him. She casually tells a servant to drag their marriage bed out of the bedroom for the stranger to sleep in. And Odysseus snaps, "No one can move that bed. He built it himself. And one of its posts is a living olive tree still rooted in the earth. The bedroom was built around it. It's a secret only the two of them ever knew. And it's the moment Penelope finally lets herself believe. After 20 years, the cleverest man in the world gets outsmarted exactly once by his own wife, checking his answers. So that's the actual story. A 10-year, 500-mile trip made almost entirely of self-inflicted disasters, held together by one man's refusal to accept any life other than the small rocky one that was his. It starts with a sacked city and ends with a tree that became a bed that became the reason he survived everything in between. Now, Nolan's version hits theaters July 17th, and you officially know the plot better than most of the people in that theater. If you want the next classic decoded before everyone else, subscribe. And if you've already seen the trailer, tell me in the comments which monster you think survives the adaptation.